Welcome to Beyond the Needle, the aesthetics business podcast. I'm your host, Emily Ruse. I'm a former clinic manager turned digital marketing freelancer, and I've had the privilege of helping dozens of aesthetic practitioners across the UK and beyond grow their business. So I know firsthand just how challenging it can be to build a successful aesthetics practice in today's competitive market. Each week, I'm here to share real, actionable strategies and bring on expert guests to help you level up, attract more patients, and build a standout brand. Let's turn your passion into a thriving business together. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Needle podcast. It feels like a while since I've done a solo episode because obviously we've had that break between season 2 and season 3. But I wanted to kick off my first solo episode of season 3 talking about something I'm really passionate about. This is the episode that I wish every clinic owner, every aesthetic practitioner would listen to before they ever consider outsourcing their marketing. Because as somebody who lives and breathes digital marketing, social media marketing for the aesthetics industry, let me tell you, there's a lot of misunderstanding out there about what it means to market yourself on social media or online and what a social media manager is actually responsible for. And if you can understand these things before deciding that you're going to outsource your marketing or which parts of your marketing to outsource, then you will get better results in the long term. So before we dive into the episode, if you enjoy listening to my podcast, if you found them helpful, I would be so grateful if you could leave me a little 5-star review, because it really will help me and help me continue bringing podcasts like this to you for free. So grab your coffee, grab a notebook and settle in, because this is going to be part pep talk and part loving but firm rant. Let's get into it. So first things first, your social media manager is not a magician. This is the hill that I will die on. We can't conjure a brand out of nowhere. We can't invent a story or a style for your business that doesn't yet exist. What we can do is amplify what's already there. And if what's there is vague, unclear, inconsistent, or underdeveloped, then that's exactly what the content will feel like. You'd be shocked how many people say all of the right things on a discovery call. They know that content's important. They'll make sure that they have a brand shoot if they haven't already had one. They understand that video is crucial. And I won't work with anybody who refuses to get onto video because that's how important it is. But then you start working with them and they don't send things, or they'll send one round of videos and then they stop prioritizing it. And then what happens is your social media manager has to try and make magic out of nothing. But here's the reality. We need you to meet us halfway. If you want bespoke, engaging, authentic content, we need assets. We need photos, videos, behind the scenes, your thoughts, your voice notes, an understanding of your brand from the inside out, whatever you've got, but it has to come from you, because no one can represent your business the way that you can. Hiring a social media manager is not a way to forget about your socials, it's a way to elevate them. And that still requires effort from your end. Otherwise, what you get is generic, and generic doesn't convert. You know, the work should be collaborative. If you're not showing up to do your part, whether that's capturing behind the scenes clips during a busy clinic day, sending over your brand story, sending over your insights into what you feel passionate about in the industry, or things that are personal to you, face to camera speaking videos, then your social media manager has very little to work with, and that will show in the results. This is something that I come up against with people time and time again. And I think what happens is a lot of people outsource their social media marketing because they hate social media marketing. Like, they don't want to think about it. They want to concentrate on what they do best, treating their patients, what they enjoy. They absolutely hate putting posts together. They hate being on social media most of the time. They don't want to think about it. They just want to hand it over to someone else and forget about it and not have to worry about it. And I get that. I get that's a big part of why people outsource their social media. But what I say to people is that it's a collaborative approach. And when I work with somebody on their social media, I will take 95% of the work off of your plate. I will take as much as possible. But I need you to give me the resources in order to do that effectively. Not just with photos and videos, although that is important, and regular photos and regular videos, and the right types of photos and videos as well are important. But understanding your brand, and I can't create something that doesn't exist. I'm not a brand designer, I'm not a graphic designer. If you have a very clear way of how you want to represent your brand online, you need to have a good understanding of that. You need to have a good understanding of your brand tone of voice, what you stand for, what you like visually, a really clear brand style guide as well. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. You can't expect your social media manager to just magic things out of nowhere. We can only work with what you've got. And if that's limited, then the things that we can do in terms of your content will be limited. I know it's really easy to tell yourself that you don't have enough time to do things, or pretend that in your head you don't need to worry about it because, oh, my social media manager's got it under control. But I think when you're investing in somebody to do your social media for you, you want to get the most out of that, right? It's your money at the end of the day, and you want your business to be represented in the best possible way online. So that does require some effort on your part. I always like to use the example of Dr. Sophie Shotter, and she has been on my podcast before. We've talked about her approach on social media, and she has grown gradually on social media over the years. She's grown in the right way, and that's why her following is so loyal, so relevant, and so profitable. Like, she gets leads and inquiries regularly from her Instagram because she hasn't tried to go viral overnight, and she's grown a following of the right types of people. But the key to her growth is that she shows up. She shows up regularly. She prioritizes content. She trusts the process. She books in regular content days every single month because she knows that it matters. I think Sophie is probably one of the busiest people that I know, but she still manages to create new content every single month because she knows that it's important, and that if she doesn't create that content, then her social media won't grow. So she prioritizes it. She books it out in her diary and she makes it a priority. And she trusts me and she's open to trying new things. So I think it's easy to tell yourself that you can just hand things over to a social media manager, but if you get everything in place beforehand and you understand that you still need to show up and commit to getting the right assets and to putting a little bit of the legwork in yourself, you will get a lot more out of it in terms of results. You'll be happier with the content that's going out, and it will do what it needs to do in terms of results for your business. So that is probably the most important thing that, and I could talk about this forever because I feel so passionate about it. I love getting results for my clients. It's not rewarding work for me if I'm putting content out there that's half-hearted or just something that I've managed to, scrape the barrel to get the best that I could out of what I've had to work with. That's not rewarding work for me or for any reputable social media marketer. So make sure you're open to being collaborative, you're open to trying new things, and that you will prioritize getting the content that people need if you're going to be investing in social media management. So the next thing I want to talk about is your branding, and why your branding and your photos matter a lot more than you think. So if you don't have clear branding, and I don't just mean a logo and a color palette, then we've got a problem. Good branding is not just the way your brand looks visually, although yes, that's important. Good branding is about personality. It's your vibe, it's your tone of voice, it's your ethos, it's your story, it's your values, it's what people feel when they come across your brand. It's how people connect to you. So when you show up online, does your content feel aligned with the in-clinic experience that you offer? Does your Instagram match the way someone feels when they walk through your doors? Or does it look like a random collection of stock imagery and templated quotes, that no one can really connect or resonate with? Because people resonate with people. People want to see the people behind the brands. They want to understand their stories and their personality, and they want to feel like they know you before they even come through your door. I've talked about this so much in other episodes. I'm not going to go into it into too much detail here today, but I do think that one of the most impactful things that you can do, and I'll talk about brand style guides a little bit more, but one of the most impactful things you can do is really get to know your brand, be able to talk about, your tone of voice, what you want to be known for, how you want to come across on social media, like all of those types of things before you start working with someone. Because if you can clearly communicate that with them, the content is going to reflect you so much more effectively. And book a branding shoot. It doesn't need to be over the top. It doesn't need to be something that you do regularly. I normally say, if you can, every 6 months, maybe every 9 months, so you've got a fresh bank of photos. Especially if you're posting regularly on social media, those photos, that photo bank is going to go down pretty quickly. But you need to be able to put photos out there that capture you, your team, your clinic space, your treatments in a way that reflects who you are. That type of content goes so much further than you think. It makes a real difference on your feed, on your website, in your brochures, your newsletters, your ads. It helps your marketing become so much more aligned, and it helps potential clients build trust before they ever walk in the door. And that's everything. I remember a conversation I had with a photographer a little while back, and I remember her saying to me that one of her clients told her that her revenue doubled after her brand shoot because suddenly her marketing was so much more effective because people could connect with it, right? She wasn't just posting stock imagery and faceless images anymore. Like, the images really reflected her brands. They reflected that luxury vibe that she was trying to put out, and they helped her attract more of the right types of people to her content, because imagery is so important. Like, we're so visual when we're on social media, and visuals that you put out really make or break your content. If you're relying on stock images, that's just not going to help anybody connect with you or feel like they know you, and it's really not going to help you stand out from other clinics. So, when I first speak to somebody, if they're thinking about using me to help them with their marketing, I will always say to them, get a good bank of images. It's so important. Your face is so important. If we don't have these assets, we either force to use stock imagery, which looks detached and cold, and I will try and avoid this at all costs, or we end up as social media marketers repeating the same photos over and over again, and that can feel a little bit boring over time. You're not a faceless brand, so don't market like one, because that will have a huge impact on your results. And there's only so much that a social media manager can do if you don't have the right assets to support the content that they need to create. Another thing, your content doesn't need to be perfect, especially your video content. I know you want to look professional, you want to come across polished, and you worry that if your video isn't shot by a professional videographer, then it's not worth posting. Okay, so many people have this misconception. They're like, if I'm investing in social media marketing, I need to have a videographer, and I need to be doing that as well, and videos on my camera aren't enough. But let me tell you something, your audience doesn't care. Your audience does not care how your videos are shot. This is social media. This isn't TV. You don't need to be putting out ultra polished, beautiful videos. Yes, you can have an element of that. And if that's your brand, that's your brand. But what I will say is that the more raw and real your videos are, the better it often performs, because it feels like a friend talking to them. It feels authentic, and it doesn't feel like an ad. Now, you have to think about how people are consuming your videos, because yes, when you post a reel, a proportion of your existing followers are going to see that reel, but you also want to get that reel in front of non-followers, new people to find you. That's often the goal, right? So those people are going to see your reel in their reels feed as they're scrolling through videos. They might see it on their explore page, maybe. They might see it on their home feed as suggested content, but they don't know you. They don't know who you are at this point, right? So you have to create trust with them. But don't forget that people decide in just a couple of seconds whether or not they want to watch a video or consume a piece of content. So if your video appears on their Reels feed as they're scrolling through Reels, and it's ultra polished, very professionally shot, that might feel like an ad to them, because it's going to stand out from the content they're generally seeing on Instagram. And we as humans don't like to see ads, and we're like self-trained to scroll away from ads as quickly as possible, right? We just want to consume the content that we want to consume, the fun content, the informative, valuable content. We don't want to be being sold to. So if it feels like, even subconsciously, if that triggers something in their mind that tells them that's an ad, they're going to scroll away from it before they even know what the video is about. So you're more likely to lose people's attention because they think you are selling to them just through the fact that your video looks ultra polished, ultra professional. And I see this time and time again. I have clients who that's their vibe. They want professionally shot, but their videos don't ever do as well. Some people who I work with who just record on their phone in their clinic, it's not perfect, but it works. I've worked with a client who films all of their videos on their iPhone, talking to camera videos, minimal editing really, but they've grown their account by 70,000 followers in 6 months. Not because of slick design, ultra polished videos, fancy transitions, or anything like that, but because they showed up consistently and they spoke from the heart, and what they said connected with people and resonated with people. That's the most important thing. So don't let perfectionism keep you invisible, because you can absolutely create content that converts just from using your phone. What matters more is what you're saying and how you're saying it. I can guide you as your social media manager with positioning, lighting tips, angles, content prompts. When I work with people, I tell them exactly what to record videos about based off of the market research that we do and all of that type of thing. So you don't need to figure it out all on your own, but you do need to press record, because that's not something that I can do from my end. And, I'm learning that I do need to be quite strict with people on this and make video like a real priority. And I do say to people, when we have discovery calls, this is what I expect from you. You know, you need to be creating video, you need to be showing up on camera, your team needs to be showing up. Like, that's important. And that's what's going to help you stand out. And that's what's going to help people connect with you and know that they like you and they trust you and that they want to book with you. Because it is so, so important. And I do feel so passionately about it. But you definitely don't need to have that pressure on yourself that it needs to be professional. There are obviously things you can do by buying good lights and, you know, having a microphone to enhance your audio quality. That's absolutely fine. But as soon as you step over the border and it looks ultra, ultra professional, high quality, then I think you risk it looking a little bit more like an ad. So maybe experiment, maybe start off filming on your phone and see how that goes. Try some professional if you really are keen on that and see what the difference is, and then make your decision from there. But then on the other side of that, I do work with people who really care about how their content looks, how their feed looks. They want polish, they want cohesive, they want that luxury vibe. And that's okay. And often those types of people, they're not really interested in growing by thousands and thousands of followers or reaching loads and loads of people. They just want their Instagram, you know, maybe they're already busy, like they're busy, a busy clinic, and they just want their Instagram to reflect their brand, so that when people land on their Instagram from Google or wherever, or their website or whatever it might be, it reflects the luxury vibe that they're putting out there. And that's totally valid. But if that's your standard, then you have to know what you want and you have to communicate that to whoever it is that you're working with, who's helping you with the marketing. So the best clients I work with are the ones who say, here's my style guide, not just here's my color codes and fonts, but they have a brand style guide. Like, they know how they speak, they know how they want their patients to feel. A brand style guide goes beyond fonts and color codes. I'm talking, what kind of language do you use? Are you warm and friendly, or are you clinical and informative? Do you use emojis? Do you swear a little? Are you a little bit informal, or do you prefer it super clean and corporate? What do you hate seeing on other accounts? What does a good client experience look like to you? What are you really passionate about talking about? What do you hate seeing in this industry? Like, what's going to help you stand apart? What are your experiences? What's your brand story? Because when you have that clarity, your content creator can create magic. But when you don't, they're guessing. They've got very little to work with. So they're having to kind of use the assets that they have and the things that you have given them to create the best version of whatever it is that they can out of those things. But if you know all of those things I just mentioned, then the content that they can create and the way that that content is going to look and feel and come across to people will feel so much more authentic to you and your brand. Like, that is key. I think a lot of people as well worry about working with a social media manager, all of their clients' content looking a similar way. And what I have found in aesthetics is that people tend to go, especially these days, with branding, I mean, in any industry, follows similar trends. But I've definitely noticed a shift towards the more minimalistic vibe over the recent years, earthy tones, things like that. Whereas once upon a time, people use a lot more colour in their brands. So when I work with clinics who have been around for kind of 15 years or more, they have a lot more colour in their branding. But, you know, everyone is very different, and some people want their account to be very clinical and very informative and very little about them personally. You know, that's not necessarily the approach that I would advise, you know, in terms of not having any personal elements to your content. But if that's what you feel comfortable with, if that's how you want to come across to your audience, if you want to be clinical and medical and informative and that's that's fine. You know, we'll work with that. But if you're a little bit more laid back, or you like talking about things in a little bit more of a no bullshit tone, that's fine as well. Like, everyone has their own idea of how they want to position themselves. Everyone has their own personality, and that will come across in your content if you understand your brand and the way you want to put yourself across, that you can communicate that effectively to your social media manager. You know, I'm about to start working with somebody who was a dream client of mine, and she's doing amazing things. She's building something really, really great, really unique. And I just know that working with her will be so easy because she knows her brand inside out. Like, she knows what she wants, she knows what she likes, she knows how she wants to position herself, she knows how her content needs to look, and she's taken a lot of time developing that. And she's got that brand style guide. Like, she knows her tone of voice, she knows the language that she wants to use and the way she wants her visuals to look, and she's so informed and she's taken a long time developing that. And she's really aware of what assets she needs to develop and give to me in order to get the best out of her content. And because of that, she will see great results because she's put that time and effort into developing her brand. And she's willing to put the time and effort into getting the right assets that sit alongside that. And on that note, another thing I'll say is that social media technically isn't a one-person job. A single content strategy involves so many different elements, researching trends, market research on your target audience, designing graphics, editing videos, scheduling posts, engaging with followers, tracking analytics, copywriting. That's not just a side task or something that you can hand over to your receptionist. It's a job, and sometimes multiple jobs, and so many people expect one person to be their social media manager, copywriter, strategist, designer, editor, brand manager, all rolled into one. And don't get me wrong, there are some incredible people who can wear multiple hats, but expecting every social media manager to be an expert in everything is unrealistic. Sometimes what you actually need is a small team, and that actually might be the case depending on what your goals are. One person to strategy, one for content, one for graphics, maybe even someone for email marketing or website design. You can't expect one person to be able to do everything. If you think about big brands, clothing brands, makeup brands, skincare brands, they all have multiple people in their marketing team. They're not just expecting one person to do everything, because not everyone is an expert in every single task. But, I like to think when I work with people, I'm a good copywriter because that's part of my background. I can make visuals look good when I've got the right assets, but I'm not a videographer and I'm not a photographer, and those are people you will need to bring in. And I'm not a PR manager either. I think a lot of people get marketing and PR mixed up. Yes, I've had client social media posts get picked up by journalists and featured in publications and articles, and that's amazing. But a PR manager is very different to someone who works in social media. So don't expect your social media managers to be a superhero. We're experts, but we're not machines. Okay, so another truth bomb. Going viral should not be the goal. I've touched on this in other episodes too, so I'm not going to go massively in depth into it, but I think it's important to understand this if you are thinking about outsourcing your marketing. I don't like people asking me, can you get me to 10,000 followers by X date? Like, I'm never going to say yes to that. I'm never going to tell you how long it's going to take you to get to a certain follower milestone. And any marketer who does, that's a red flag, because no one can predict that. No one can tell that. Everyone grows at different paces. And actually, going viral, I understand that people associate higher follower numbers with more credibility. I don't necessarily think that that's the right way to think. But for me, having an engaged following of the right types of people is more important, especially if you're a local clinic. Look, everyone's got different goals, but for most people, and I'm sure most people listening to this, you're a clinic or practitioner based in a certain area, whether that's a big city or whether it's a little village in Yorkshire. But you don't need to go viral, right? You just want to grow a following of the right types of people based in your local area who are interested in what you do, and to grow your brand awareness in that area. That is your main goal on social media. Then you've got people who genuinely want to grow and go viral and really build their followings and kind of be like an influencer, doc or nurse or whatever. That's fine. That's going to require a different approach. I'm not talking about people with those goals. I'm talking about people who are running a clinic. They want their clinic to be busier. They want to be reaching the right types of people. They want to grow an organic following, like a gradual organic following of the right types of people. To me, that is more important if your goal is simply to build your business and be busier in clinic and get more leads from the right types of people. If that's the case, you don't need to reach 200,000 people with your content, because you can't choose where those 200,000 people are going to be located. So what I see is people go viral with a video. You can't stop that. Sometimes like videos get picked up by the algorithm, they get shown to loads of people. You can't stop that. That's fine. But what I then see is the people that it's reaching, they're based all over the country, all over the world. And you end up with a following of people who are in a different country to you and are never going to book a consultation or a treatment with you or buy anything from you because they're based halfway across the world. So what's the point in having them on your follower list? Wouldn't it be better to grow gradually and grow with the right types of people? If your goal is to go viral, is to be an influencer doctor, then your approach is going to be different because you do want to go viral. And what I will say is that not everyone is equipped to go viral. And this is definitely something I've noticed over the years, because you could have two different types of people putting out a video about the same type of thing. One goes viral, one doesn't. Why? Why did the other one not go viral if the first one got picked up and was watched by thousands and thousands of people? Normally it's because of the personality, and there are certain things that make someone go viral. You know, they're a natural performer, they're a storyteller, they're naturally good at content creation, they're very confident, and that comes across in their content. But not everyone has that personality, and for most people, showing up on camera is their least favourite thing to do when it comes to running a business. And going viral isn't an easy thing to do these days. We've got so much competition with other creators, so many people putting videos out there. And also, we're competing for people's attention. So it's not an easy task. But what I find people usually lean into in order to go viral is that opinionated stuff. You know, saying things that other people are afraid to say, dissecting celebrities' faces, openly criticizing popular treatments, being very outspoken in their opinion. It's an easy way to go viral. What I find also works quite well is where you rate products, you rate treatments, or you, like I had one of my clients put out the other day a video where she rated different retinol products, a mixture of, you know, your kind of medical grade retinoids and your over the counter retinoids, and that did really well. I think at the moment it's up to 80,000 views, and it got her 800 new followers in a few days. You know, stuff like that can do very well. But look, you don't need to go viral to build a booked and busy clinic. You just need to show up consistently, offer value, and speak to your ideal audience. Growth can and should be sustainable. And if that's your goal, if your goal is to be busier in clinic, but you don't want to be the next influencer doctor, you don't need to go viral. And like I say, not everyone is equipped to. Not everyone has a personality on camera that is going to go viral, so don't put that pressure on yourself. So the next thing that I think is really important for you to know is that your marketing is not going to fix a broken sales process. So if you're not seeing bookings from your content, but your content is solid and it's getting people over to your website or it's getting people in your DMs, the issue might not be your marketing. It might be your sales process. Marketing's job is to bring people to the door. It's your job to let them in and make them feel welcome. So I think this is another common misconception about social media marketers or digital, like anything to do with digital marketing, is that it's the marketer's job to make you money. It isn't. The truth is, if your website is clunky, if your inquiry form is hidden, if your booking system is confusing, or your team is slow to respond, or you're not following up with people effectively, and I think I will do an episode at some point about, you know, optimizing your sales process and the follow-up process, because this is something people get really, really wrong. You know, people message you, inquire with you, you send them a response. A lot of the time people aren't responding to people quick enough, but you send them a response, you don't get a reply, and then you just let them drop off. Like, why are you not following up with them? There should be a clear follow-up process in place. Day 2, day 5, you know, whatever it is. I think this needs a whole episode dedicated to it. But if your sales process isn't up to scratch, that's where people drop off. Not because they didn't like the Instagram post. You know, the Instagram content got them onto your website, but your slow website made them click off because they couldn't be bothered, and then they got distracted, and now, you know, you've potentially lost them. Or what I see a lot is people reach out on Instagram and the salesperson at the clinic will say, "Thank you so much for reaching out. What's your phone number? And I'll give you a call to discuss." People are busy. Like, we're busy these days. I know that if I was to reach out to somebody and say, "Oh, I'm really interested in this. I'd love to find out more about it. Can you give me a bit more information? What's the price? Like, what's your availability like?" And they were like, "Oh, can I give you a phone call?" That would put me off. I'd be like, "Oh God, I've just not got time to speak today. I'm busy. I don't know when I'm next going to be available to talk." And I probably wouldn't respond to them. And I find that a lot of the time people don't respond because also people are wary about handing out their contact details. Like, just give people the information that they need. Always finish with a question. Like, don't just give them a paragraph of information without any kind of personalization, and not ask them at the end whether they want to know anything more or what's their availability look like next week for a consultation. You know, make sure you're having a conversation with them. Investing in sales training, I think, is probably one of the smartest things you can do for your business, especially if you're transitioning from NHS to private. You weren't trained in sales, so don't expect to just wing it and be good at it. And this applies to your front of house staff too. Are they confident on the phone? Can they explain the difference between different treatments? Do they know how to build urgency without being pushy? Marketing amplifies what's already there, but make sure that it's worth amplifying. So next on the list is Google still matters, and it matters a lot. So Instagram is great, but Google is still king when it comes to buying decisions. When someone is ready to book a treatment, guess what they'll do? They'll Google it most of the time. They'll check reviews, they'll look at maps and compare different options, different clinics in the areas. If your SEO is non-existent or your Google business profile isn't well optimized, you're handing business to the clinic down the road. One good thing is, Instagram and Google are working together now more than ever. So as of a few days ago, back on the 10th of July, your Instagram content is now indexed on Google, which is huge. So you need to make sure you're using keywords, alt text, and posting strategically. And Google will likely show your content to people who are searching for those things. So don't just rely on one platform. Diversify. Have a presence where your ideal patient is making decisions, not just where they're scrolling. It all feeds and connects into each other. But a lot of people who are, looking for clinics and are like in that buying stage are searching on Google. And then they might go over to your Instagram and look at your Instagram to get to know you a little bit better. So again, you want to make sure that reflects your brand well and it says the best that it can do possibly about you and helps people connect, get to know you a little bit better and trust you. Or they might find you on Instagram, follow you, consume your content for a while, usually for a relatively long period of time, and then inquire. But Google is so important. I see people all the time making a mistake of putting all their eggs in one basket. They'll start a clinic and they'll just be thinking about their social media, but you need to be making sure your website's up to scratch, your Google business page is set up, your SEO, your website is optimized so that people can find you. Like, these things matter. They all matter. It's not just one or the other. And I think another thing worth mentioning here is that patients don't book straight away. So don't work with a social media marketer for 1 month and be disappointed if you don't get leads and inquiries. That is so misinformed. People don't book treatments on a whim. Most new patients take at least 45 days to decide, sometimes months, sometimes years. There are people that literally think about their treatments for years, that will research and watch clinics and practitioners for years before deciding. They don't make decisions overnight, especially when it comes to aesthetic treatments. These are things that there are a lot of barriers to purchase. There's a lot of fears that people have about having these treatments and exploring these treatments. So if you're expecting next day booking from the content that you're putting out, you've misunderstood the point of marketing. It really does take time to build that know, like, and trust factor with people. So consistency is key. Okay, just a couple more things to go. I feel like this has been a very in-depth episode, but hopefully you're finding it useful. So I also wanted to touch on aesthetics being a specialist industry. I think the aesthetics world is really like no other. It's clinical, it's regulated in terms of what we can and can't say about certain treatments. It's emotionally charged, it's nuanced. You can't afford to have someone writing captions or creating content for you who doesn't really understand what fillers are, or that you can't legally say Botox in your content. If your market doesn't understand the patient journey, the ethical considerations, or the language of the industry, they're really making it up as they go, and that puts you at risk. And I've had a lot of people come to me before to talk about how I can support them, and they're very cautious about working with somebody because they've worked with people before and they were maybe a marketing agency, didn't have any kind of speciality in aesthetics, just a general marketing agency, and the content wasn't good and what they're putting out wasn't good, and they found they were spending so much time correcting things and telling people exactly what to say about certain things, and it was coming to the point where it'd just be easier if they just did it themselves. So what I would say is that this probably isn't a job for someone who's never worked in aesthetics or doesn't have any experience in it. It's not the same as managing a fashion brand or a coffee shop. Your content has to be legally sound, it has to be medically responsible, it has to be emotionally intelligent, it has to understand the different pain points and the pathways that people go down when they're exploring aesthetic treatments, the audience, that you're speaking to. And I found this myself when I've tried to find support from other marketers, to bring into my business. I'd love to have a bit more support at times, but it just I've never been able to make it work really, because people generally don't understand aesthetics, or they put it into a category that it probably doesn't belong in, and they make it very beautified, you know, whereas for a lot of practitioners listening to this, that's not how you'd want your content to be presented. That's not how you'd want your content to come across. So work with someone who gets it. I think that's really important to understand. And finally, I want people to know that your content can still be personal, but you do need to help your social media marketer, your social media manager, whoever's doing your digital marketing in any aspect. Your content can be personal. It can sound like you. It can feature your experiences. It can feature your opinions and the things that you want to talk about, but you do need to help that person get there. A lot of people worry that outsourcing means losing that personal touch, but it really doesn't have to. It can still be you, your voice, your values, your story. All of that can and should be part of your content. We need you to tell us what those things are. We don't know what you'd say to your 20-year-old self if you could go back in time, or what skincare mistake changed your whole approach, or the treatments that you swear by, or your own skincare struggles, or your business journey that's helped you get to where you are today. That's all content gold and can really help people connect with you and resonate with you on a personal level, but only you can give it to us. So send voice notes, messy bullet points, share stories from your clinic days, tell us what your clients ask about every single week. That's stuff that builds real connection, and we can help shape it into something polished and powerful. We'll turn it into digestible, beautiful, strategic content, but it starts with you being willing to share and like knowing to share that and getting into the habit of regularly sharing things. I think a lot of people just think that a social media manager can just do it. Like, I have people send me things all the time. Like, for example, the other day, one of my clients sent me that trend that's been going around, the one that's "if you ever think about me," with the kind of facts that pop up about you, which is, yeah, a great trend. And she was like, "Oh, can we do this?" And I replied and I was like, "Yeah, of course we can, but I need to know the facts, like what facts do you want to include?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, of course, let me have a think and I'll come back to you." And it's like, I think people just, again, it comes down to that. You don't want to be involved. You don't want to have to think about it. You just want someone else to do it for you, but that's not always realistic. And if I'm just going to make things up, which I would never do, then it's not going to sound like you, and it's not going to be personal to you, and it's not going to feel like you. So yes, your content can be personal. It can have that personal touch. It can be your voice. It can be your values. You can share your story, but you have to understand that you need to put the time and effort into developing that with the person who you choose to work with. And it's something that you need to do regularly. Like, regularly be thinking about things that you're willing to share, opinions that you want to talk about, things that you think would be, good to include, and share them. Because, like I said right at the start of this episode, your social media manager is not a magician, and they're also not a mind reader. So to wrap this episode up, outsourcing your marketing is an amazing step, but it's not a magic wand. It's a collaboration. So show up, communicate, trust the experts that you have decided to work with, and understand that the best results come when you treat your marketing like a real part of your business, not just another box to tick. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you found this episode helpful, send it to a clinic friends, tag me in your stories over on Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe and leave me a 5-star review. I really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one.